You're listening to Alternative Future Radio, home of the weird, resting place of the paranormal. We'll take you to the furthest reaches of the galaxy and beyond. Strange phenomena, aliens, psychics, cryptozoology, conspiracy, holistic health, and UFOs. Alternative Future Radio, where spooky just got real.
The Out There Hour on Alternative Future Radio. The Out There Hour with Basil and Mark. www.alternativefutureradio.com.
Yay! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Out There Hour. Good morning, Basil.
Good morning, Mark.
Good evening, everyone. And good afternoon, you're supposed to say now?
I think you got it all a bit mixed up. I was actually meant to go
a little
first.
Bit awry there.
Yeah, but never mind. You're bound to be excited with our wonderful guest, Dr. Carol Rosin.
It's Carol Rosin Day today.
Yeah.
I think we're just going to declare the whole day Carol Rosin Day. It's the website. Basically, they've got a treaty together and they want to try and stop the weaponization of space, everybody.
Yes, and they're hoping to present this treaty to maybe China, Russia, get them to sign it, because America is not going to sign it.
Not in a million years, one would guess.
It sounds a bit crazy maybe to you, but we must tell you about Dr. Carol Rosin.
Oh,
She was corporate manager of Fairchild Industries.
She was.
She worked with German rocket scientist Werner von Braun for many years. Before his death.
Pretty much invented the space program.
Yes.
Well, the V1 and V2 rockets.
So this lady knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, she's got friends in high places, astronauts, former government ministers, and they're all on board and signatories to this thing.
You're going to hear some very, very high-ranking military names. During the course of this interview.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm going to play a little ad, and then we'll get her on, shall we?
Let's get her on.
Lovely.
You could give to the Red Cross. You could contribute to the March of Dimes. You could donate to the Salvation Army. Or for just $1.99, you could get the Alternative Future Radio Android application and do something that will actually make a difference in your life. Find out more at alternativefutureradio.com.
Okay, so hopefully we should now have Dr. Carol Rosin on the line. Basil's getting nervous. Are you there, Carol?
I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, Carol. Well, we know a little bit about you. We know about your Peace in Space website, peaceinspace.com. We know that you've got your space treaty that you're working on. Do you want to start on that, and we'll work around that, shall we?
Sure. This is probably the most exciting thing that I've done in the 40 years of focusing on the space issue that now has expanded into the cosmos culture, UFO ET kind of issue, which I didn't think was a reality until not too long ago. I've been working on a treaty, however, that's going to officially acknowledge the fact that there are cosmos cultures with respect for the indigenous cultures, both of whom are mentioned as parties to this treaty, that's called the Outer Space Security and Development Treaty.
Okay.
And I've been working with the most amazing men to co-author it, including Dr. Scott Jones, Commander Jones, who founded the Peace and Emergency Action Coalition for the Earth, but he's actually a former naval intelligence officer. I met him when he was chief advisor to Senator Claiborne Pell, the senior ranking senator, the first senator actually who asked me, a woman, imagine, to testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee. And Dr. Edgar Mitchell, some of your listeners may know of him. Yeah, the Apollo astronaut, sixth man on the moon, and founder of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, because he wanted to study the brain and the mind after he had an out-of-body experience in space.
Wow.
And Commander Will Miller. All of these men are retired, by the way. He's a decorated Vietnam combat veteran, and also was an advisor to the Department of Defense, the U.S. Space Command, White House staff, and many people like me who have been working on this issue that seems like it's rather far out to some people, but it did to me for a long time, but it's actually real. And finally, two others, Abe Krieger who's an aerospace engineer, 37 years at Boeing, an international space and missile business development executive, and a senior structural kind of engineer with the lunar orbital. He organized the U.S.-Russian space station for Boeing. He's amazing. And finally, the Honorable Paul Hellyer. Also, some of your listeners may know of him. He's the former Minister of Defense of Canada, but he is also a very outspoken supporter of not only the peaceful uses of space and a transformation of the economy all over the world, but he has also been quite outspoken about, again, this off-planet culture issue as a reality. And so I'm finding a lot of support with these men for me to get the courage to go forward with the truth, because we're all told so many lies.
These chaps, they're not what anybody is going to get away with calling lunatics, are they? I mean, normally you would say, well, this guy's crazy, let's just disregard him. They've got so much weight behind them and their careers and their titles and things that they have to be taken seriously to a degree, at least, by anybody, surely.
That's exactly right. And my biography isn't a slouch one either. So I think with the power of our biographies, which, by the way, are in full, they're brief versions of them on the website you mentioned, peaceandspace.com, but the courage behind these men, these distinguished experts in their fields that cross that military industrial lab university intelligence community complex, to take a stand that this treaty actually is about to ban all space-based weapons is quite a feat. And it's a milestone in our time, because if we don't ban space-based weapons, we're all in a lot of trouble. And if we do, it's in the best interest of everyone in the complex and all over the world, the benefits and opportunities of transforming us out of the old paradigm game of war and weapons of war into a new paradigm in which consciousness evolves. We become more aware of who we really are in the universes, and how these technologies that otherwise would be used for wars again, and in fact probably would cause the obliteration of the human species. I'm sorry to make it sound so negative, but it's the truth. You hear what's happening in so many different issue areas like radiation and so on. We have a chance to work our way out of this field. And for these men and the power, as you say, behind them to come forward and support a treaty that will ban all space-based weapons, which will free up brains and money to be applied to the urgent problems on this planet of human needs, the environment, new energy, health, education, communication enhancement, etc. This is just an amazing moment in time. And the treaty itself has so many incredible points to it. There's some talking points right at the beginning of it, and it goes into a description that is based on former treaties that are past, now obsolete, like the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, even updated, would not ban the kind of weapons they're planning on putting in space, which are too horrible to speak of, and the consequences are even worse. But also, this will free up the industry to allow entrepreneurs, the industries, labs, the youth of today to come into a whole new field of jobs and job trainings that are really worthy of the space age. And the whole treaty is, I mean, every point in it is worth an hour of conversation. It's really an amazing document.
I think, Carol, the main question I have, having spoke to quite a few people on the UFO subject, we've been informed that perhaps not every alien is going to be so nice. The question is, I wonder, how do we defend ourselves against an invasion? If we
let me make a correction. I'll make a correction in that what you hear from people, there is absolutely no evidence of there being hostile aliens. There is a factor in the human species that, first of all, explored and experienced the past relationships that we've heard about with extraterrestrial beings. But now it is very clear to all of us who are working in an advanced state of this issue, that none of them are hostile, period. So either the footnotes that have been passed through history and the interpretations and perspectives of that kind of research and or experience is what's influencing people to think that they are evil, not to mention the fact that there are so many movies and videos and footnotes, as I mentioned, I think are just amazing, being passed through very scholarly type research books by people who haven't even had an experience or who had that fear-based, this is an ego and fear-based culture, this human species. So we have certainly not evolved, all of us, to the point, or maybe any of us, where we don't have a fear factor in ourselves, and yet the ETs do. And so this is an advanced way of thinking that we really must get to on this planet, or we're going to continue to be as self-destructive as we are as a species and allow our so-called leaders and representatives to lead us right down into the Holocaustal kind of...
so-called.
Yeah.
But they're not hostile.
Yeah.
Anyone that's being visited right now, and I've heard from so many people, high-level people, even military people who have talked about how UFOs have flown over their bases, shut down missiles.
Yep.
There are two ways that you can interpret that. Oh my God, they're coming here and they're shutting down our missiles, and so they're taking control of our nukes. And that, I've heard that. And then you hear the more sane and balanced, mature and evolved version that is, they've shown us what they're capable of doing. They didn't take us away and steal our ovaries and resources. And they didn't come in and aren't to control us, or they would have a long time ago. Why would they come into a planet that's destroying itself?
Yeah, they'd be well capable, wouldn't they, already, if they'd wanted to? Yeah.
It just makes sense. And it's very difficult. I'm an educator by background originally. And
a teacher.
It's it's hard for me to even admit that maybe it's my ego. I thought that I could reach people with this sanity approach, sane approach. But I'm finding that there are some people that are just simply uneducable. They're not reachable. And I have to admit that. And what I'm doing is hoping to reach the people who really get what I just said. There is a state of evolution, and we're heading for it. And we have a great opportunity in our lives now to provide a world for our children. And that includes the 500 million orphans, the people that are being droned and killed out every day. Now we can't even eat tuna fish. You heard the latest, the fish that have washed up on the shores on the California and coast where I am, up in Oregon, are irradiated. They're finding magnesium. They're going to lie and say that it's not harmful, even though it's like a little bit pregnant.
Yes.
The lies that we're told are making us not know what to believe or who to believe.
That's true. A friend of mine, Carol, has a great anecdote. He says he doesn't mind if aliens turn up as long as they're vegetarians.
Perfect.
If they're vegetarians, none of us have got anything to worry about. We're okay.
Actually, the truth is they would not eat each other.
No.
They are vegetarians.
I'll reassure him with that later.
To promote vegetarianism. I head that way anyway. I mean, if we can't even eat the fish now, next 10,000 or is it 10,000 years at least.
Yeah.
It's getting to be really sad. And these fish, by the way, travel around the world. And even though the latest research on the radiation, if Fukushima's unit number 4 blows, if there's a 7-point or above earthquake, and what some of the experts whom I talk to say, it's not a matter of if there's one, it's when it happens.
Yeah.
Well, they're changing the safe levels of radiation every week, I understand.
Yeah. It's getting safer and safer every week.
It's getting safer and safer, and the radiation's getting higher and higher.
Sleep well, Carol. Sleep well. Carol, you were saying that I think you mentioned Edgar Mitchell and the former Canadian Defence Minister and yourself have all had some kind of experience, contact, whatever you want to call it. Do you want to go over what you know to be the case? Because I know I've talked to you. I've talked to you before we were on air for some time, and I still don't have the complete crux of this. So can you sum up to us your knowledge of who is out there, their names, what they're up to, where we are in all this picture? Just give us the skinny.
Well, Edgar Mitchell has not admitted to actually having had an experience, but he was born in Roswell.
Okay.
So he knows a lot about this issue. And when he's been my advisor for almost 40 years of my institute. Can you imagine? And years ago, I remember him saying to me, if you talk about UFOs or ETs, so I didn't hire anyone in my institute until I don't have anyone now working for me. We're doing this off on the side, out of pocket.
Yeah.
Raising the money to get to 9 world leaders to get this treaty signed. But years ago, we made a pact to not talk about this issue because of the ridicule factor and the disinformation. It's very difficult to prove that this even is a reality.
Yeah.
Because we don't have what some people call the smoking gun. I think we do. We couldn't have more evidence that this is a reality. It's so ridiculous. You just have to know who to believe and be able to tune in intuitively or scientifically or with your just plain common sense to know that this is a reality. That there can't be millions of people in photographs and videos and honest people that you know are telling the truth talking about this and then deny it, unless you're really stupid or you've come up with this kind of skepticism that we're taught to have and think that that's healthy, to be skeptics and negative, in fact. But when you hear the real truth, if you can rise above, and it took me a long time too. I mean, I'm one of the stupid people. I didn't even hire anyone in my institute for years who came in that said they had a UFO or ET hobby or read books about it. And I really feel stupid for having done that. I turned away some really good people, I know. But so I understand. I mean, I didn't get hired in the defense industry because I was a peace activist. So I came in with that same kind of defensive, fear-based attitude that I need to protect myself and I still feel that way on occasion, but not from ETs, from humans. But it is Scott Jones, Dr. Jones, who has admitted to having contact and came up with the most extraordinary statement that I think I mentioned to you last time that I'll repeat because he has given me permission to say it on the air, that those people who get this and that they are not hostile, who will then in fact help us get the treaty signed to ban space-based weapons so that they can be invited in. Not that they can't be here because they have been for a long time, but to have them officially acknowledged so that it's in a peaceful state of mind, which humans have a long way to go. And I think we need to snap into it now. We can't do long way in terms of Earth time. We need to snap into some real high level intelligence, evolved thinking. Those people, as Dr. Jones and I have both had the experience with Cosmos Cultures, we have been told, and we finally compared notes on this very hesitantly because I've been a reluctant traveler in this whole thing for a number of reasons. He has said now that the people who get what I just said will be invited to be on the front line, present at one of the many landings that will take place once there is an official ban on space-based weapons. So we're hoping that people around the world, and we've been hearing from people in several countries, we only need 9 to start by the way the treaty is written, 9 world leaders to sign and ratify this treaty to make this treaty law that will ban all space-based weapons. And we'll be invited to be at a landing site. I can't think of anything more exciting, more of a milestone moment in time than being where it's not in the movies, it's for real. We're there when they come in. And I mean, can you imagine that loving moment and the love vibration, the frequency that is what they represent now coming in? I know some people, like you mentioned, won't be able to accept that. They're going to jump right back into what we've all been so carefully taught, the fear factor or the ridicule factor that usually, or often I should say, goes along with it. But there are many people. I mean, in one of my email boxes, I've got over 23,000 emails. So I know, and not one, I shouldn't say that. I had one negative out of all those thousands. Someone wrote to me and said, what do you think? How can you say that with all those negative, evil aliens that are coming in? You want us to be weaponless and not be able to, we can't defend ourselves against these beings that can come shut down our missiles. Give me a break. So I don't even respond to that, because having debated generals on the Larry King show and being told things like, if you can walk 4.2 miles from the site of a nuclear blast, you can be safe if you hide behind a lilac bush. That was in a debate on General Graham, who introduced the Strategic Defense Initiative to President Reagan. I was on a road tour debate with that man. Can you imagine? And he said that to me. I mean, there are some people my eyeballs did roll on CNN. I'm embarrassed to say. But there are some people that are just not going to get there this time around, or maybe they will if they don't think it's Spielberg when they actually do land. I think we have a number of people now evolving rather quickly out of desperation, out of learning, that they're hearing things like the whole Northern Hemisphere is going to become uninhabitable if there's a point earthquake in Japan or above that will cause even more radiation leaks. And number 3 unit is just about in as bad a shape, but we don't even hear about that. And 1 and 2 are leaking every day into the ground, into the ocean water, into the buildings around it. And this is dangerous. This is really horrible. And with a different frequency, a different consciousness, we will be able to tap in and take that money that even in Japan, can you imagine the leaders now committing to work on missile defense? What? I mean, the country's leaders are being seduced into working on missile defense, which at this phase in our lives means space-based weapons. So we have a very short amount of time in which to get this ban into place and get that money and the brains redirected so that many people who have already demonstrations that just need to be funded of inventions, or we'll learn and won't even need those from the ETs that have traveled here without any fossil fuels. So we have a lot to learn from the cosmos cultures. And for the companies, the laboratories, the country leaders who get this, they're going to be far ahead of the game. And I don't know if the United States, by the way, is going to get in there first. We're dealing with the treaty. I basically have kind of given up on this administration, I'm sad to say, in the U.S. But eventually, when the rest of the world leaders come in and get sane and ban space-based weapons, which is a really dumb, dangerous, destabilizing, extremely costly, unnecessary, untestable, unworkable idea unless there's a war in space. Once these leaders get all that and see what the potential of transforming their entire economy and, taking care of the suffering and stopping this horrible mutilation and torture of innocent people, and people they call enemies that are not enemies at all, are trying to defend themselves. And
Carol, I've got a question for you, Carol. Is that you were saying earlier, if I got you right, that these ETs, we'll call them, I don't know if you have another name for them, these ETs are going to come and make themselves known to us and do the whole disclosure thing if we ban space-based weapons. But number one, why do we need space-based weapons? But number two, if we currently don't have any and they're going to come if we ban them, why wouldn't they come now? And then, hopefully we wouldn't ever invent them,
Excellent questions. And it's a rather complex kind of dimensional answer to them too. First of all, there are no space-based weapons. There's no evidence of them at all. And that's just one of the other lies, like weapon of mass destruction. I remember telling people in the military, because I have a lot of friends who are moles still in the industry, who said there are no weapons of mass destruction. And that's why a lot of our boys went into war and girls and came back dead or maimed or suicidal. And it's a pathetic thing that we then have to call them heroes and wave the flag and play them. I mean, it's just sad. So there are no space-based weapons, and that just needs to be told. But even if there were, we could verify the banning of them because everybody knows what's in space. There's no way to not know among the people who are launching satellites, space stations, now getting ready to put up hospitals and hotels and craft to take people on tourism trips. I mean, 500 people have put down their $20,000 on their $200,000 tourist trip into space. That's going to happen very quickly for their 10-minute ride into zero gravity. So, we have no weapons in space to start out. Why would they not come in? They are coming in, and millions of people have seen them. And many, many, many people have had live communications. I have always hesitated to talk about my experience.
Okay.
I just put a quote on the back of Clifford Stone's book by Paula Harris. I'll tell you what that is just a second. Where Clifford Stone, the story of his crash retrieval sites that he went to. And he has a foreword in his book by Robert Salas, who's a military man who saw a craft come in. He didn't see it. His men on his military base saw the craft come in and shut down missiles.
Yes.
And then turn them back on.
I think we've heard of that, haven't we?
Is this the Rendlesham Forest incident, or is it a different one?
No, that's something completely different.
Oh.
Right.
He was in Roswell. I went actually to see him with Leslie Kean, who has a best-selling book on generals and pilots and military people who have gone public on this issue, again, having had live experiences. So they're in. They come in. What can't happen until humans have evolved, and that means committing to no space-based weapons that are going to continue, I should say, to shoot them down, shoot down the craft, to reverse engineer them, or whatever they're doing with them. We don't know the truth, and we won't know it until they actually can come in by invitation. We need to actually prove, not that we have to prove to them, we have to prove to ourselves that we're not going to do what we've been doing first to each other. Because if we're doing it to each other still on this planet, we're going to continue to do it to what we called in the treaty the cosmos cultures.
Yeah.
I just had personally a lot of trouble saying UFO and ET because I think those words have been so discredited, which is a shame. But we call them cosmos cultures. And so even though people like Clifford Stone has a very convincing claim of being on the inside of military operations involving the recovery of UFO craft and extraterrestrial beings.
Yeah.
And I met him myself in his home with his wife and heard about the threats similar to what I have and many whistleblowers have gone through to not tell this truth. I found him to be extremely credible. We both have had very similar experiences, and he didn't know any of mine. So when he told me about his, I knew that he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
And there was no exaggeration. Paula Harris put his book together for him. She's written a number of books, as you know, interviewing many people with different perspectives on this issue. But Clifford has, he's rather more on the religious side than I am. I think religion is going to change dramatically, too, when we find out who we really are in these bodies in the universes, when the ETs come in. And I use that expression because I think most people are more familiar with it.
Yeah.
Paula's done a lot of interviews in her 4 or 5 or 6 books now. And so there are people that have talked about the fact that this is a reality and they've come in. But to answer your question, they're not. Why would they come in when we're going to keep shooting them down, lying about them, turning them into evil aliens? And where I got kind of put on the map on this issue by default, I didn't want to be, and I don't want to be going to UFO conferences and things because I do go meeting with world leaders. That's where I want to put my energy. But I was told by Werner von Braun, who was the vice president of Fairchild Industries.
Well, Werner von Braun, I just want to point out, because people may not realize, and I'm glad you mentioned him, the German rocket scientist.
Yeah.
And many people have thought of him as being a Nazi.
Yes.
Which, of course, he was the one who planned the escape from Nazism and from Hitler. And was so people who knew him, of course, knew that whole story.
You met him in 73, 74 when you were working
I met him in early 74, yes.
You were a corporate manager of Fairchild Industries at the time.
No, actually, he's the one who talked me into leaving the teaching profession. I was teaching 6th grade and a child psychologist type of person at that time in a miniskirt. And I had no idea what he was talking about, but he was so mesmerizing, dying of cancer.
Yeah.
And I was pretending my students were living and working in a spacecraft that we had set up our classroom to look like, and it hit the press. So that's how I ended up getting a Fairchild who was looking for a woman, just a woman, probably in a short skirt in those days, to be pushed up the corporate ranks of industry. And he adopted me and brought me in, told me he wasn't going to die in 3 to 6 weeks like they were telling everybody. And he did stay alive for another 3.5 years. And wow, what an experience that was. And along the way, I met a man named William Winterstein, who has a book. He died not too long ago in his 90s. The Secrets of the Space Age was his book.
Carol, was Werner von Braun working for somebody at the time?
Pardon me?
Was Werner von Braun working for someone at the time? Or was he retired?
He was vice president of Fairchild Industries, who had called me up into the industry.
Okay.
And I have to admit, I was kind of silent when I first met him. I don't sound like I would be that type, but I am.
No.
Yeah. And I sat there with him telling me, you will come to Fairchild and be here in 3 weeks, and I'm going to teach you what the real game is. And in the process of that 3.5 years, he did a lot of a major turnaround of my mind and gave me the assignment to prevent the weaponization of space, which is absurd. But that's what I've been working on ever since he died in 1977. And he also knew about this issue. It was very clear he couldn't talk about it. I'm sure he was under threat because were all under threat for a long time. And they were not allowed to talk about a lot of things that they knew. And, they were German here trying to survive and just wanted to be rocket scientists and go into space. Of course, when they first got here, they were sucked back into the missile program. But eventually, von Braun got to work on the Apollo, and he worked with Walt Disney and prepared movies on going to the moon and Mars, and with the crafts that he designed for those movies now actually look like the real crafts. So he was just an amazing man. I have to tell you, just before, let me find this thing. If you're interested, I have a couple of quotes from him that nobody, I don't think, has ever heard since 1974.
We'd love to hear them, please, yes.
It's odd. Right before we went on the air, these papers fell out of a shelf. And it's amazing to see this, because here's a commencement speech where he says, and this was back in 1972 before I met him, at the risk of sounding like every other onward and upward commencement speaker, let me say that I think technology, far from causing all of our problems, offers our best hope for solving many of them. Notice this is my dialogue came out of his brain. I think he's been saying this for an awful long time. Here's a guy that worked, as you mentioned, under Hitler. Mentioned, but you alluded to.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I don't mean just space technology either, although I do think that the space program, and particularly Project Apollo, has a message for people everywhere. And that message is, we can undertake and accomplish any bold project, however difficult, if we have the will and the courage. And then here's another one from 1974. Now he's looking back into the beginning of the Apollo program, and this was in August. And he's speaking to the Veterans of Foreign Wars Convention. And he starts to talk to them about, I cannot think of a single field of science and technology in which the knowledge and techniques available in 1961 were sufficient to achieve man's leap into space, no matter what the fields, power plant technology or aviation, medicine, electronics, or measurement, control engineering, astronomy, or mathematics. In every case, back in those days, we were standing on the threshold of unexplored territory. And he talks even in the management techniques and how to develop new methods. And he goes on to talk about the ATS-6, the spinoff of the Great Leap of considerable value to the whole of humanity. A current example of that is how space technology is helping people here on Earth. So he was always trying to educate people about how, instead of building weapons and technologies that could destroy, how we could help people here on Earth. And he goes into this to talk about the project that I worked with him on, the Application Technology Satellite, which was the 6th biggest communication satellite in existence at the time. It was launched in May 30th of the year 1974. I got to Fairchild about February.
Okay.
I have not looked at this paper until just now, by the way. And we actually set up, and I was kind of his runner because he was so sick. We set up telemedicine experiments in Alaska. On my wall, I have a picture of myself in my miniskirt, but in a white high bay jacket, standing next to Von Braun and these.
I think I may have seen that picture, Carol.
You've got it on your wall.
It's on the wall.
I just hung it up today. And I have next to it. Now, we did telemedicine experiments at that time, and imagine what we could do around the world, and we're not doing it. We could if we would put the money into that instead of making enemies out of everybody and killing them. We set up in Fort Yukon and Tanana, Alaska, little tiny offices where you could take, I remember, he has another example here, but the one I remember was a little boy with frostbite, and he could put his frostbitten hand in front of the camera in one of those little setups and transmit it to someone in Fairbanks or Anchorage, Alaska, where there was a doctor on duty who would diagnose and prescribe what to do. Yeah. And there are many, many, many sick people and children around the world who need this kind of technology, and this was back early 1974. And then this satellite was loaned for a year to India. And today I hung up a picture that I found that I don't think anybody has seen. There were 5,000 Indian villages that we set up. Imagine this. And people had never seen television. And there's a television on top of this roof, and the whole village gathered around it. Yes. And what programmed into that was, for one thing, a population control. And what that was, they picked I Love Lucy and a couple of funny comedy shows, and they couldn't understand the English, but they thought they were so funny that they were watching that, which kept them busier at night, so they weren't going home. And the other thing they taught them was how to plant rice crops during the monsoons. A man with a little hat got up on the screen and showed how you took the rice and planted it a fist apart instead of all together, because during the monsoons it would all wash away otherwise if it was all piled up in one spot. Things like that could be, now it would be so much more advanced, because there are spacefaring nations and satellites and communication in almost every country in the world now. We've managed corrupt a lot of them because we have brought in and invaded our ways of thinking from the Western world into places where they really could have, and we need to protect their culture and respect it instead of trying to change it. Just maybe help them so that they're not so sick, and they can be given educational communication techniques to enhance their lifestyles, but without us projecting ours on them. Ours in the Western world is what I've seen in my travels, and I've been part of that, and I'm really sorry I participated in it. Yes. So he says people, that's the key word I've been talking about, which is education. And he uses the people of India in this project as an example. And he says the people who have paid their taxes to support the space program, the people of this country and others invested in the great effort of men, of course he's thinking men, material and money, are now beginning to get direct, meaningful benefits from the space program. Well, all of these speeches that I have just found, and I just kind of scanned through just before we met here tonight, or morning, wherever you are. It's about, 1:30 in the morning my time. He talks about the emotional experience of men in space, the landing on the moon and eventually exploring planets, as an example of justification for continuing the space program. And when I worked with him, I have still never met, and I have had the opportunity to meet some amazing people. I've been really lucky in my life, and I've never met anyone who was a more prominent spokesperson for peace, for the peaceful uses of space, who has been through the rocket complex that turned into part of the war machine, Operation Paperclip and all that. He really, like many of us who have worked in the complex, in that revolving door game, learned that there was a way to maneuver ourselves without shutting down the aerospace defense industries. I know a lot of people protested who are against the militarization of things, and he taught me to be against the weaponization and to redefine the militarization of space, because space is militarized. Of course, you can't get into space or anywhere without the military involvement, but in space we can do it without weapons. And that, of course, is the beginning of putting a lid on the war machine on the Earth and transforming it. And that's the vision. That's the kind of vision that I got from this man.
Did he somewhat make a prediction? I was watching an interview with you the other day.
I've got that clip if you want it.
It was basically, almost a prediction of 9/11. First of all, he told you about
Carol,
Russia.
can I play your clip from the press club?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll play that. Okay.
I was introduced to the late Dr. Werner von Braun.
This is the one.
Father of rocketry. He said to me, Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space. And we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over. And the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat. Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions, to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies.
Blimey.
And that, I might add, was before 9/11.
Was it?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Interesting.
Just before. It was in May 9th, 2001, the Disclosure Project that was coordinated by Dr. Stephen Greer. And he brought in 20 of several hundred witnesses from the complex, different levels of careers. And they all went public with various forms of their relationship to this disclosure of the UFO issue. Yeah. And yes, von Braun, you can hear in that. By the way, I had no rehearsal for that and no notes. And I walked up to the podium the whole time. You'll notice that in the photos of the Disclosure Project, I had the audiovisual guys turn the lights away from me. I was hiding behind Danny Sheehan. There were two white-haired people on the other side of the table, but not in the photos because I turned the lights away. I was so not wanting to be there, but I was told by Stephen Greer and his wife Emily that I had this responsibility to tell this quote one more time, or this story of von Braun, and so that's what I did.
Just in time.
And as it was coming out of me, the passion of his significant message is what you heard, and I can feel in my voice as I break out in a sweat listening to it. He knew that the wars against the ETs were going to be developed just like the lies that we had been told about all the wars that we've been in.
Well, they give us an enemy to be afraid of to control us. So it was first of all it was the Russians, and then it was and then they came up with the Middle East. So there's always something to be frightened of, and they gain control of us by keeping us in fear.
Oh, you're so right. I'm not sure why many people don't get that and just go, oh my God, maybe I'm hearing or I'm thinking that way again about even the extraterrestrial beings that they haven't met. They don't know. It wasn't a recent experience if they had one. And so there is something, there's like an unevolving flaw.
Well, they're alluding to it now in the media and the movies, the UFO threat.
Yeah, it's been increased, certainly.
Hasn't it, in the last few years?
Yes, there's even some guy in the military that's gone public on YouTube saying how and he's supposedly representing the military, how they are preparing for the possibility. What if there's a possibility? That's always a good one, of them being evil and hostile. We better prepare for this. Well, good luck. I mean, that's the ultimate lie that von Braun was talking about. And as I got that, I who got hired in the defense industry because I was this little woman believing everything everybody was telling me about the evil Russians, for example, because that's who was in vogue when I got there.
Exactly.
And then I got on a plane. I went to Russia. The Russians told me I was the first woman to get off a plane by myself, not part of a missionary group or something or business. I just went on a plane. And when I got there, I met, and drop-off was in office.
Not for long.
Not for long. But when I got there, he was in office, and I met with everybody except him that I had on my list that I had gotten names out of a newspaper about. And they were so wonderful. It was so not, they thought I had to be a CIA agent. And of course, I thought they were all KGB agents. Yeah. And then I found out that there was only 1% of them were. I walked in with my hands on my hips saying, what do you want to be a communist for? Yeah. And then I found out less than 1% of the people or anybody there was a communist. And in fact, their system was working, actually. Everybody had a job. And now, of course.
In fairness, if you didn't have a job, you went to jail.
Yes, that could be too. Well, actually, if you talked against the government, you also could. Yeah. We went outside.
Sound familiar?
Yes, and now it's pretty much like that here.
It is, I'm afraid.
Names of people that I would like to say on your show, and I can't mention certain events. I'm in a holdback position. We Americans, for example, can be attacked, threatened, robbed, lied to, and lied about in other countries, which is what happened to my husband and me in another country.
Yeah.
So coming back here, we found it was still better than where we were in a country where we didn't even know about the Napoleonic laws. But at least here we can work through the system. I'm not sure this is a safe place to be because of the radiation, pollution, chemtrails. And then I find out that that's happening all over the world. So the world is literally, it's not just the Northern Hemisphere. The world is in real serious jeopardy right now. And talk about people being in denial or getting disinformation and considering it to be facts. And knowing that we're all, I'm trying to stay out of that state of fear and depression. My husband.
You mentioned Russia and your experience there, and you said 1% in control. And now in the West, we've got 1% in control of the entire West. America, Europe, Britain. Spot the difference.
Yes. And fortunately, people in Occupy are rebelling and all of that, but you don't hear them talking, that you may hear a protest now and then against space weapons or a call for space for peace. But there hasn't been a tool until this treaty. And a lot of the protesters, you won't hear them go for the treaty. You know, we're not used to, as activists, actually getting something done. We're usually reactionary to something that's already happened.
Good point.
Carol, you mentioned when you were talking about Werner von Braun and your now famous quote at the press club, you were talking about them faking an extraterrestrial event, we'll say. How would they go about faking such a thing? Because there's a lot of amateur astronomers out there would be able to see things, and how do you have any idea how they would actually go about doing that?
You know, I can only guess, and I don't like to speculate, but I have looked at some of the latest techniques in movies, the holographic images and so on. You can walk down the street in a town and think you see a building that isn't there, and these things are on YouTube. I was in, some of these stories that I've had, I'm going to put in a book, so if anything does happen to me again, I'm going to tell them to send it to you guys. So you can disclose it. But I've been in, I've been in places where there are facades and they're not real. So has Clifford Stone, I'll put it that way. And many of us know that there are technologies that are so good that to the visual eye, because we're very unsophisticated in our vision as a human species, we don't know that we could walk through walls, but ETs do. And we will be able to, in a different frequency, in a different dimension, can travel. So we have many ways as humans to trick the mind. Subliminal messages that are on television.
Yes.
There are so mind control technologies, and you can go on the internet and find out much information about this. I'm possibly going to write the foreword to a book if I can actually communicate with her, because we've been blocked. Our phone lines are blocked from talking to each other. Dr. Rauni Kilde from Norway. She's Finnish but has been in Norway. And we've talked about the psychotronic part of all of this, psychotronic weapons. And suppose that the mind has been controlled. Psychotronic weapons in space, in geosynchronous orbit, which is about 22,300 miles above the Earth, if you put mind control weapons in space in 3 spots in that geosynchronous orbit, which is when the Earth rotates, whatever is in that orbit stays in the same place. So permanently, you have 3 spots above the Earth that are hitting the footprint of the entire planet. Now, just say, talk about controlling how you think or perceive. Just say you have psychotronic weapons in those 3 places that can control your mind, how you think, how you act as an individual, as a group, make you sick, make you well as an individual or as a group. There are many ways to control the human species, and these are the weapons that we will ban with this treaty. And if we don't, the consequences to me are just unspeakable. I can't even go into them.
Microchipping, they're very keen on at the moment, aren't they? For some reason.
And Von Braun, of course, which leads me back to your original question. Von Braun, here's a man who was building the V2 rocket who got blamed for starting this in the space program in a negative way, when in fact the first thing that these scientists could do when they got here was try to educate people. They all became educators, Konrad Dannenberg, Kraft Ericke, a lot of them. And several hundred of them came over here. Some went to NASA, some
they were
went
all
to Russia.
German, sorry, were they, Carol?
Sure.
Oh, I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
We only know, well, I know of Von Braun. There's many more.
Oh, there are many more.
Well, the entire space program was practically German.
Yes, and they thought originally, it's all in this book that I mentioned that Bill Winterstein wrote, or William Winterstein, Secrets of the Space Age. He contacted me because I had also been called by some peace activists, supposed peace activists. I'm now called a Nazi or a Nazi lover because I worked with Von Braun. I mean, give me a break. So, the ignorance level of people is in the range from the far right to the far left and down the middle. We've all been dumbed down. It's not that I don't understand it, because I've been one of them, and I'm still learning things every day, waking up. But Von Braun and these scientists did come here to help start the space program, but they had no intention of building more weapons. That's not what they were about at all. From childhood, they were Von Braun. Oh, here's one. Listen to this. The strongest motor in Werner von Braun was his desire to take part in the exploration and the mysteries of the universe. As a young boy, he decided that this exploration could be accomplished with rockets, so he devoted his life to the development of powerful, high-precision rockets. And I haven't read any of this or the rest of it, but what he told me was that at 14 years old, he was thrown up against the wall by one of his teachers for drawing pictures of rockets. He only wanted to go into space. He told me so many times, I just want to travel in space and know find out who we really are, who our neighbors are. And that kind of accomplishment was only touched on before he died. And by the way, one of the businesses, he would talk about how we could transform the economy. And one of the first space businesses that I became familiar with was the launching of Ashes into Space. Yeah. And I helped launch Timothy Leary's Ashes into Space. I was one of his caregivers. I was the all-night show when he was dying.
Timothy Leary, he's hardly the inventor of LSD, was he? But he was a great proponent of it anyway, Dr. Timothy.
Well, he was a proponent of expanding consciousness in the mind. By the way, he was very best friends with Werner von Braun, of all things.
Interesting. How interesting.
Carol, you were talking there about the business of space and changing the economy. You talk in your treaty and on other things about converting the economy and taking all the money out of defense and plowing it into space technology, I think is probably the best way of saying it. How, because we all know the military-industrial complex is there to earn money, basically. How are they going to earn money in space if they're not shooting at people?
That's the best. That's the bottom line question. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. How we're not talking about letting our arms go. In fact, we're talking first only about banning space-based weapons. Yeah. That can be done because there aren't any. Yeah. And we have plenty of weapons down here on the planet. This treaty will not eliminate the earthbound weapons.
There is a desire to have space-based weapons, though, isn't there, Carol?
Oh, it's huge.
So if there's a desire, why would they sign the treaty?
because if they can, well, we have to educate them and get them to wake up. First of all, it's not going to happen in the U.S. because we're absolutely committed to wars.
That's what I was thinking. And, not known for listening to public opinion.
No, not at all. So we're going outside. The 5 people I just mentioned to you, and many, many people who are supporting us to do this. Again, we just have to raise the money. I hope people will help us find somebody that can keep sending us money so that we can get our tickets and get to 9 presidents of countries outside of the U.S., and then the U.S. will do it. These are not stupid people.
You're not talking about a lot of money, actually, Carol, are you? You may as well do a money plea because we don't mind, because you're not talking about megabucks here, right? You only want to ship a few people around the world it's a few airline tickets and a couple of holiday inns.
That's exactly right. We just want transportation, food, and hotels and taxis. That's it.
Yeah,
if somebody would just
put you
say,
up here.
We get it, we'll pay for your tickets, we'll pay for your food, we'll pay for your hotel rooms, we're fine.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
And these men, as you'll see the biographies of, will be most impressive in talking to the leaders. So that's one of the things.
Yes.
They're going to listen to us. And here's what some of the things that they can do. We have a tremendous need on this planet right now for Earth observation. There are some very serious environmental problems going on around this planet, and we need to get the technology applied to solving those problems. Again, when the cosmos cultures come in, and that may be a little bit far out for some of these leaders at first to hear, but I believe all of them know the truth, and if they're going to tell the truth, we're going to find out who the first truth tellers are in the world leader situation, in the world leader arenas. So Earth observations is one of the things that we need most of all. There are humans that are going to be living and working in space. They already are. A few hundred people have already stepped off the planet, but we haven't even begun to explore the universes, and we're getting ready to do that. And of course, in earthbound terms, we're talking first about Mars and the moon and all of that. But we've got many universes, many galaxies and universes out there to explore. And while you have some of the earthbound people looking into where's water and there can't be ETs without water, well, maybe they just don't need water.
Exactly.
You know, maybe they're silicone-based.
Exactly.
What are they going to do with water?
Yes, and these are also dimensional beings, too. We also need safety security systems. There is a huge amount of business in these fields that I'm mentioning to you. In communication and education, this is a huge field and will employ people. I wrote a book years ago. It came out in the early 80s called Space Careers, and it was about jobs of a non-weapons nature in space and on Earth that resulted from the space program. And because I was an educator, I went into the field of education. And that includes education about health care. This is a very unhealthy human species. We need to develop advanced healing techniques. That means communication, sharing of data, information, and intelligence in a new way. So again, we're redefining defense. We're defending ourselves against the horrible problems that are existing and the potential problems of huge amount of human needs, environmental needs, and energy needs. These are huge businesses that this worthy of the space age industry is going to create. And it's going to create jobs in the military. When we're talking about the global safety systems, humans in space, Earth observation, communication and education, and space exploration, living and working and traveling in space, we are not going to be able to do that without the military. The military people that I've met, I've spoken before many audiences. My husband and I are honorary Marines of all things. And we have really enjoyed meeting our military friends, who most of whom are in service. And that's what the new military role is going to be. And when you saw, if you watch Democracy Now!, you can watch democracynow.org and catch up with it, over the NATO meetings a couple of weeks ago. This is May in 2012 that we're talking. And they showed it again on Memorial Day the other day in this country, in the U.S. You saw veterans, and we heard that there were thousands of veterans across the country throwing their medals on the street, in pools and rivers, that were in protest of the wars that are ongoing now, and why they gave all the reasons that you can imagine for why we should not be in these wars. They found out what I did, that they're all based on lies.
Exactly.
So they were there, though, and all of them were there in one way or another in service, or they needed a job or training for when they got out to support their babies and their families. Yes. And some of them will not be able to do that now, and they're not getting the treatment they need. Yes. So many of them are committing suicide, and their friends have, and they're coming back without arms and legs, or, really beaten up from these wars, not anywhere near as badly as what they're doing to the people there, for which all of them were apologetic. And these people want jobs. They need jobs, and it's one of the most well-organized systems on the planet, are some of the more sophisticated military systems. So that's where you get your command control, your intelligence, your sharing of data technologies. Instead of drones, you can fly over and see where people have migrated, so that you can send in the water and food and medicine.
Yeah, exactly.
Carol, we're pressing on for time, but we've got a couple of questions that have been sent in by our ever faithful Danielle Zana, who is much better at researching than we are. Thank God for her, because she does most of our research for us. I've just got a couple of quick fire questions for you, Carol, because I know you're probably wanting to, I would say go to bed, but I know full well that you're up until at least 4 a.m. because I've talked to you before.
Too much to do. Days are spinning out too fast.
Yeah. Now, she mentions here, have you contacted or are you in cahoots with, on some level, any of the ET-friendly organisations on the Earth? And she mentions the Raelians, which I know she's keen on. They've apparently got a plan for an embassy, an Earth-stroke ET embassy. And I heard that, and I thought, that sounds like a fantastic idea. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm open to communicating with anybody that will help get this treaty signed. I'm pretty well focused on it, and I have not initiated the contact. What happened to me was, I saw a lot of people doing things that were not going to change the game. Yeah. And that were not really going to contribute. Not that protesting and petitions and declarations and resolutions and all of that aren't good things. They are. But I've been in the industry, and that ain't going to change beans. So I decided to go for the highest level people I could find. I made several calls. All of my other mentors were dead, physically dead. Yeah. These are older men I'm working with now. And in fact, I'm now one of the older ones. I'm 68. Some of them are between my age and well into their 80s. And so I decided to get the most credentialed people, and I just had in my mind I'm going to get 5 men, because it's a male world, sad to say. And I wanted that backing to get an agreement made among world leaders that I know from my world travels are going to sign this treaty. They just need for somebody to come in with it and hand deliver it. It can't be delivered in the mail. And that's kind of the focus I'm on. And it's easy to get spread thin because I'm so interested in working with everybody on all these issues. If the Braillians, if people want to get in touch and can help contribute or go with us, we have 2 documentarians just called, and they're going to come with us and actually film the whole thing. We only have to pay their transportation. We don't have to pay them for the movie, for any of their work. They're bringing their own cameras and lighting. It's amazing. I don't have to raise a cent to get the filming done so that the world can share this experience and the world celebration too. I mean, there are embassies. Wouldn't that just be wonderful?
That'd be fantastic. I mean, we've got somebody from the Raelians on the show later in the month, so we'll ask them what they think about that as well. Go on, Basil.
I hope this is not a silly question.
Of course it is, Basil. It's coming out of your mouth.
I'm just thinking about getting this treaty signed. Would it be in the interest of Iran or Russia or China?
That's what I said.
You know,
just to perturb the Americans, basically.
Would you take the advantage of the situation, Carol, is what I'm basically saying there.
As you ask that question, this is what I'm doing this week, is I'm working with the men to write the letters to the world leaders that we've chosen to start. And of course, Russia and China. Russia I've been to many, many times, and China too.
And
I'm an
China.
official advisor to the People's Republic
You were.
of China.
You were.
I haven't been there in years, but I know they wrote the first treaty that we used as a foundation for this one.
Oh.
We added in some more facts. We took out details because if you're debating the specific weapons or nuts and bolts, you're going to get tied up in a debate. It won't change anything.
Yeah.
So we wrote in the treaty what can be in space and what can't, very general, but it fits everything that anybody would ever need to ban space-based weapons. We set up in the treaty something that wasn't in it before, an agency that will be formed by the first 9 leaders and then the ones that come in that will produce the technologies for verification and enforcement of the treaty. Enforcement being the working together, not enforcement based on weapons in space. That ain't going to happen either. So we also we have decided, I have decided, and our group has, that Russia and China are primed for this because, again, they produced a treaty to ban space weapons, not necessarily space-based. We put it where it's actually real and we can get this done now. And we added in, as I said, some very prominent points that when people read this treaty, it's not a treaty, it's actually a story. And it's the last part of it sounds like typical UN legalese, but it's the only way we have of getting a world law and this conversation into an agreement. And that's why we're doing a UN treaty, but we're not going through the conference committee. We're going outside of it.
Yes.
Then the leaders will send the treaty to the Secretary General's office, which is the treaty depository. He or she presents it to the General Assembly and it becomes world law. It's very simple. We only need 9.
Amazing.
And
Carol,
we're told that many other countries at the UN will sign on as well, over 50% right away.
Carol, what happens if we don't sign this? And because you mentioned the consequences earlier, so I mean, how did you find out about the consequences? Who told you that? And what are the consequences of not doing this?
Well, if you can imagine, we see torture and wars taking place all over the world. We haven't seen them. We're just starting to see little bits of it when we saw satellites being used as what they're called force multipliers, aiming weapons. And of course, they miss because these technologies are not guaranteeable. And we also have now seen drones. In fact, drones controlled from long distances away going in and supposedly bombing the crap out of certain places that really don't need to be bombed.
Schools and such like.
Supposed enemies, yeah. So we're seeing the beginnings of what could happen from weapons that are then based in space that you and I and all of us will not be able to protest, picket, or get them down, and they will be used. If they are put into space, they will be used.
So they're going to be used against us? Because I must admit, all the time we've been talking, I had a feeling that the intention was to use these weapons outwardly, but you're actually saying they're going to use them inwardly.
Domination and control and power.
Right.
And they're very few, and we must not let that happen. We cannot let that happen. So if you can imagine the worst of what can happen in wars, this planet is going to go down also, not just the wars, but because the money and the brains are going to be applied to the weapons and wars as have happened, and we're supposed to be satisfied with just the spin-offs as the benefits and opportunities instead of the direct benefits and opportunities that will come when we ban space-based weapons and then trickle down, get rid of the weapons, the dangerous and polluting nuclear and other weapons and technologies on the planet, and replace them with what the alternatives are that are available and that we'll learn so much more about when we begin to communicate honestly, openly, not just the few scientists who are in touch, but everybody. And we get into that other frequency that is, pardon the expression, the love frequency. We will be able to, and that's not a la-la land idealistic frequency. It exists, and it's a healing technology frequency as well. And as Von Braun would say, technology is just an extension of the mind. If the mind is aimed at the suffering and destruction continuing, that's just what we're going to get. We're getting it right now. Doses, big doses of it. And if they're saying that the northern hemisphere can become uninhabitable if there's a 7-point quake in Japan where they built these units right on an earthquake zone, by water.
It's called the Ring of Fire for a reason.
Exactly. And people are saying, maybe HAARP caused it and all that. It's sitting on an earthquake zone, for heaven's sake. So and we have them all over the States and all over the world, these plants, and they need to be shut down and replaced, period, quickly. And that's what we're going to be able to do. Or we can, the answer is be destroyed, continue the suffering and destruction. We could be totally obliterated. We're very close to that with the chain of life right now, with even the fish in the oceans and being, we can't eat them for the next 10,000 years and people are smart.
Carol, can I just ask a quick question?
Disasters, we could be obliterated.
Carol, is there an or else involved in this? Have the ET cultures, have they expressed a desire for this to happen? Is there an or else?
Do you mean self-destruction?
To me, they have expressed the or else they will leave. They're not coming in to intervene. They won't intervene. They're not coming in to help us. They have communicated with people to give information. They've called on certain people to be able to say certain things. One of my messages is none of them are hostile. And that's a strong message. And I have several others, but that's the most.
Because I just wondered whether or not maybe they had said, you should get rid of these weapons, or else, we'll.
Or else is what I just said that will happen to any one of number of man-made or natural disasters that don't get the proper attention, funding, and so on, and or the possibility of those really insane people that are controlling some of these weapons, these really dumbed down, insane, empty-headed people. Yes, I'm into blame right now on that one because so many people are suffering.
Disagree.
And children. And I'm, what keeps me going and keeps me awake every night, if I think I start to get tired, is all I have to think about is the children, 500 million orphans. And I didn't have children because those are my children and the animals that can't speak for themselves, and I've watched them being destroyed. And my husband was the voice of the Dolphin Project. He also introduced the Disclosure Project, and so I've been talking to Rick O'Barry, who founded the Dolphin Project to save the captive dolphins and whales and so on. And when you hear about the specific stories of the different species of animals, and we're just animals, and we've done this to our children, I cannot sleep. I will not sleep until I get this treaty signed.
Carol,
maybe an hour to a night. That's all. And the rest of us need to get active on this treaty too.
So something's occurred to me when as you say, species. I'm just wondering, do you have a description of the aliens that you've been in contact with, or what kind of what do they look like, or others have? What exactly do they look like?
To me, this is kind of unimportant, but I have the ones that I've seen that have come through the walls with not just me in the room, with someone else with me. Because they told me that with some people like me who wouldn't have believed it otherwise. I thought someone dropped me a tab of acid. They're visiting. They told me that they're visiting people in twos and more. And so that was amazing for me.
That would make sense.
Yeah, so especially for the people like me who wouldn't have believed it. And that also, though, I have been in a telepathic communication for many, many years, and that was confirmed to me in that physical visitation. Because how could I possibly know and do what I'm doing? If you saw my biography, it doesn't fit a sixth-grade school teacher.
Well, I only asked so people wouldn't be frightened if they had an encounter.
People are interested. You have to ask the question because people want to know. That is such a common question.
And what's really, really important to know is if you hear somebody talking about the evil reptilians or whatever they stuff to tell you, just rip it out of your Rolodex. Don't even waste your time unless you like science fiction. And know that the science fiction that is real is based on a whole different frequency now. They have evolved the universe, and now it's our turn. We have an opportunity to evolve, or we won't. And one of the challenges that we have, because we're so carefully dumbed down, is for us to get a grip on our thoughts and evolve ourselves. And you don't have to love everybody. You don't have to forgive everybody. You don't have to believe a bunch of belief systems. Do what's real in your heart and in your head, and walk away from toxic people.
Yes.
Read the book, go ahead and waste your money.
You're right.
To me, though, it would be much more valuable and more properly.
It's great advice.
Don't ever, ever be afraid. And if you travel around the world, you will see the people are peaceful and loving.
That's right.
It's just a little few who have a huge self-interest, corporate interest, vested interest in keeping you afraid, keeping us afraid. Do not buy into that lie anymore.
Somebody once told me that they thought that people were inherently bad, and I've traveled around the world a little bit, and I came to and my thoughts were similar to what you were saying, is that people are inherently benign. I wouldn't say that they were massively positive on the whole, but I would say generally people are benign.
Absolutely. They are. It's just the vested interest, the self-interest, and that is what may take us down. If you talk to my husband right now, who is a prolific reader, he's a scholar and a retired actor and very supportive of what I'm doing, even though he thinks I'm absolutely wasting my time because the human species is not going to evolve. I don't believe that. I'm an educator, and I know that there are enough people on this planet. We just need to tap them, and that's why I love you guys and your show, because you are doing this. And I just personally walk away from the people now who don't get this. It's fine with me that we're all in different places on the path. I get all that now. I've been there. We're all there, and I'm still, like I said, learning. But I will not hang out with people who think that they're evil aliens coming and who are, working with shamans who aren't real shamans that are telling you things like this, because it's just a lie. And there are a lot of religious myths. There's a lot of disinformation based on people's perspectives and interpretations of perspectives based on their own experiences and knowledge or belief system that they've been carefully taught or adopted that somebody told them about or that they manufactured, because we're a very creative species too.
Yeah.
I'm counting on the creative part of the species and the people who say, look, whether they're weapons in space or not, or no matter what, it's a stupid idea to put weapons in space. But, if the ETs were evil, we're not going to be able to develop a technology a few thousand years in advance.
Carol, I think people, I think people are waking up in one respect, because you mentioned the Occupy movement, you've got the Thrive movement, the Sovereign movement. I mean, people are waking up to sort of geopolitics,
individual elements,
the left-right paradigm, and global corruption, the Bilderbergers, and that. There's a lot of awakening to that.
What we've concluded with the treaty is the only way to get to the real truth is to get a ban on space-based weapons, which will be the end of the war machine. And it will not be allowed to expand into the universe, which is just a ridiculous idea, but that's where they're headed with it, because the industry, the military complex, has always been about seizing the high ground.
Yes.
It's nothing new. It's just that in yours and my lifetime, the high ground happens to be space itself.
But
and we're not
every time they've had an enemy, it's somehow been turned against us, the public, hasn't it? Be Russia or the Middle East, or
it's 1984 classic reverse psychology. So. You're at war with what was it, Eurasia or Australasia?
You're at war with,
and you've always been at war with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So we have a chance to have peace on Earth like there is in space. As Pia Larsen, who's in Denmark, probably listening or will listen to the show, she's one of the musicians that has written actually 3 or 4 songs that are coming out for
great.
the treaty. And we also have James Wabed, who is a Native American Indian.
Nice.
His song has come in. He actually used some of my words from the Disclosure Project or a video in his song, and so did Gypsy. Ben Gypsy, you'll see Zulu. He has just sent a song in too.
Wow.
And so we even have music. We need to get back to music and the arts, and that's been at the bottom of the totem pole, even in the schools.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back into health training and how to eat and how to heal ourselves, because we're in very bad shape on this planet right now, and we have solutions. To me, I want to hang around with those people who know the solutions, who don't bring in the negative news, because it's all based on lies. We need to put all of our energy into occupying ourselves with a new space age vision. And that's what's in this treaty. I don't mean to be so one track, but I am actually. So I hope people will go to peaceinspace.com, because that has our bios. It has a very simple plan of action for the people. But the insider plan of action is what I'm calling on your listeners to contact me. And you could do it through that website or at my email address, spacetreaty gmail.com.
Great.
And let's work together, figure out how to get us to these world leaders. That's where we are right now. As I said, we're writing letters, we're putting information packages together that prove that they are about to weaponize space and that show that there is another vision, that your most important question that you gave me is focused on what can be done instead. Basically, there's a dual use of almost all technologies. And so instead of building a railgun, we can be building a mass driver. If they're going to mine them, or the asteroids, they cannot put weapons up there.
Yeah.
And they have to do it differently than what they did on Earth that actually has been destroying every species that is reaching so close to the chain of life of our own. And I would like to continue living on what I see as a garden planet, all of us standing on this little mud ball. And we have a chance to create that self-sustained planet, but we need a new form of governing. It's a new form of management. As Gary would say, we do need a new world order, but we need a world government that actually stands for a management system that's based on vegetarianism, that's based on not killing and eating and torturing and causing destruction. And that's based on, in fact, not saying that, but that's based on enhancing communication, education, intelligence, on finding out who we really are in these bodies, in these man-made and geographical boundaries, and in the universes. And we have the opportunity to do that, not in 10 or 30 or 50 years, which is when I started out, that's what we were saying. We have a chance to do that here in 2012. And to me, that's what this shift, this awakening thing is all about. And you can't predict a time or what's going to happen. You create it. And that's what we're doing day by day. And we have a chance now to evolve into the universes. Why not? We've traveled around the planet, but let's just do it differently. Let's do it in a way that gives us, as Von Braun said in that little statement that I just read from you from one of his talks in the 70s, just before he died in 77. And let's look at these visionaries. We have a lot of good information to pull out of the children. They know what we need. And we have a chance to solve the problems on this planet and evolve together in a loving way. And for me, I'm just walking away from the toxic people temporarily, and hopefully they'll come along and will leave me alone if they're toxic.
Yeah. Carol,
let's work together like you're doing.
I've got one last question for you, Carol, and then we'll let you, well, I would say go to bed, but we both know it's not happening. I mentioned this to you the other day when we were talking. There are, I believe, a number of instances where people who are intersexed, hermaphrodites, half male, half female, various variations of both and things, have had contact, stroke, abduction, whatever you want to call it, with ETs and things like that. I just wondered if you wanted to go over what you might think that's all about, because they are scientifically interesting, one would think, if you were from another planet, to find somebody who was different to most people. That might be something you're interested in. I wondered if you got any thoughts on that.
I'm not interested in it, actually.
Well, not you, Carol. I was talking about people from other worlds might think it's interesting, not you.
What I see happening is...
Unless you're abducting people, Carol. Do you want to reveal that?
What I see happening is, and I think where you're going with this and where I go with it, is that I think we're a balance, all of us. And from my ET experience, I couldn't tell whether it was a male or a female.
Yeah.
And I see in many of the people that I know a balance. And I have a lot of friends who are gay or lesbians. I have a lot of friends who are heterosexual, homosexual. It doesn't matter to me. But I know it does to a lot of people who are not familiar with it. There seems to be an evolutionary process taking place, though, in that awareness, because if people are really honest with themselves, we all have a male-female in us. So where we go
Basil
with that...
does. You should see some of the stuff he wears.
I love it. I would love it probably, because I love the creativity of both men and women. I think we each have something so strong and so passionate and so much fun and so creative to contribute that I want it to be a mixture. And we need to be working together, because I deal in a mostly all-male world in the military-industrial complex that I came out of, that I spent most of my life focused on, it seems. I saw that even the most macho of men were marshmallow-loving beings, most of them. There are the few who take that extreme to the macho part that doesn't have respect for anyone who doesn't think the way they do or look the way they do. They're even phobic about it. And I think that's just a sign of the fact that we need to evolve to become more balanced. And so I consider that to be a balance issue and a choice issue and a how we're born issue, which, in some cases we're just not in control of. Then it becomes an intelligence issue. How do we want to handle and perceive each other? And if you take that another step further, how are we going to perceive and interpret and get along with the extraterrestrial beings if we can't accept who everybody is on this planet, whether they're hermaphrodite or they're wearing a burqa or they're in their uniform or they're running around naked in the woods tripping on acid. I mean, why can we not explore and allow ourselves to be who we are, where we are on that path, but in a state of respect and understanding or curiosity at least, not in a state of negative looking at someone who doesn't look or act or isn't like you or me. That's where I really come out on it. And I think that we're all a balance of it. And then because of however we're born into these bodies or the environment that we're in or the choices that we've made and may change, that's who we are. We have a huge choice. One of the interesting things that the ETs in my experience said to me was they were at first doing experiments on humans to see why we are the way we are. Why are some holding the light and some but beating up and killing and eating each other? And then they found out that we're all egos, and they are too, except that they have evolved to that point where maybe they are a combination. I don't really know. I think that, again, I won't know until we are at the landing site and we get to meet each other and be in that most loving experience. Puts ecstasy on the back burner that I've ever had was in my meeting, and the man that was with me was freaking out afraid. So we come from male, female, we come from different perspectives and interpretations. It's just time for us to get into that other frequency, if those who can, if we can, and try to maintain it. And it's not easy, because there's a lot of stuff going on this planet that makes everybody very confused. Everybody has to be confused in one way or another, because we don't know the truth, any of us. We do know that we are in a state of turmoil and destruction and suffering that's leading to some very bad situations on this planet, very bad. And we have a way out. And this treaty is one of the keys to getting us out of this mess. And people are working on these issues so beautifully, from the hunger and the environment and health issues and taking care of people best they can. And I try to work on the local level on all of that too. But I cry a lot. I got fired from the Humane Society, actually, on our local shelter, because I cried when people didn't take the animals home, and you're not allowed to cry. So I did the animals instead. And a lady on Facebook sent me 2 toy poodles to fill my heart.
Carol, we know you don't do many interviews. And I know you've not got a great deal planned for the future, so we want to thank you for coming on, but we're rapidly running out of time.
We so appreciate you, Carol, talking to us today. You've been so kind.
Thank you so much. And I do this because of the respect I have for you in your search for the truth, and the fact that you have listeners who obviously are searching for it too.
Carol, let's face it, we're both cool. And that's why we're both here. Carol, you're cool, we're cool.
You really are.
We need
Thank
to
you
say
so much for having
say
me
no
on.
more, Carol. Our coolness carries us.
Well, I think it's good that you've been able to speak to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East.
Exactly. Yeah. We're very big in the Middle East for reasons we still don't understand.
Well, I'm hoping to go to the Middle East very soon, too, because there are a couple of world leaders there that are even writing about peace.
Wow.
And I think they've had it with the suffering, too.
Oh, I bet.
And it's time for, representatives from all over the planet from these leaders. And if anybody's in touch or wants to help us get in touch with leaders, this is where we are right now. So this is the fun part. And as Von Braun, one more thing he shared with me was he was scribbling on a piece of paper when I first met him, little circles. And he handed it to me the first time I left his office. And it was a scrap. He just ripped it off his page. And it says the word humor in little circles.
Yes.
He spells out humor.
Yeah.
And he said we have to maintain a sense of humor because things at some point are going to get so serious.
I think
That's where we are.
We get a little
So-
bit knocked sometimes, don't we, Mark? Because people think we're not taking the subject serious, but we do like to have a laugh, you know?
Yeah. I mean, God, life's too short.
Oh, yes. And I'm smiling now because you guys are pretty funny.
We're pretty silly.
Well, Basil, anyway. Well, he looks daft in that frock, but other than that.
Well, let's just get a ban on space-based weapons and get this over with.
Exactly.
Exactly. Carol, give your website address
And any
another
details
time.
you
And I
need-
need to give it out again.
It is peaceinspace.com, PEACEINSPACE.com.
Yep.
And my email is spacetreaty@gmail.com. And I really look forward to, I answer every single email that comes in. So I look forward to hearing from everybody. And on our website is a donate button. So
Yes.
if you can send anything, or you can just say, I'll just pay for all your tickets and your hotel rooms, we'll be fine.
That would be great.
We'll bring granola bars.
You
I mean,
never
we don't
know.
even have to eat. We just need to get there as quickly
A
as
wealthy
we can.
philanthropist would be
never know.
very, very handy.
never know.
You're not
Very
you're not looking for mega money here. You're not looking for millions of dollars. All you're looking for is airfare and some hotels.
And, I had a couple of women that for years funded me and my institute just whenever we needed money. And they were unknown. They didn't need to become known. Some people may be. But it's usually somebody out there that's like us that are rather normal, abnormal people who have a pocketbook and who can say, look, I can give you this much. So here's 10,000, 50,000, $500,000. Here, just go do it. And there are people out there. And that's really what we need right now because this is an Earth Space Initiative, but it's one that is relevant to every single issue. It's going to have obviously an impact on every issue when we change this whole horrid game that so many of us know we're in that's causing so much depression too. I mean, this is a state of mind that it's not so easy to get out of, and we have a chance to do that now. So let's go for it. Let's all go for it.
I know what.
Brilliant.
I know what would help, Carol. We've got a song lined up here. It's called "Peace on Earth."
And in space, the treaty theme 2012.
And we're going to play out with that.
I think we will.
By Pete Larson in Denmark. How wonderful. Thank you so much.
Carol, not everybody gets to play out with their own song. In fact, you're the only one ever.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Carol.
It's been an honor and a pleasure.
And with you.
Do come back again sometime, I hope.
We're all in this together. I hope we will
We're all in this together.
Thanks, Carol.
continue it.
Peace with you, Carol.
Thanks, then.
We want the peace on earth and in space. We're not alone. This treaty is the key. It's gonna open up the doors. We will receive what is given to us. Now is the time. We'll get it done. This one will change the whole game and we're done. We want the peace on earth and in space. We're not alone. This treaty is the key. It's gonna open up the doors. We will receive what is given to us. Now is the time. We'll get it done. This one will change the whole game and we're done. This is the first time this treaty ever been presented. chainsaw game and we're done. Yeah, 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 yeah. We want the peace on earth and in space. We're not alone. Don't you know we've got to get this right? Street against the keys, gonna open up the doors. We will receive what is given to us. Now is the time. We'll get it done. We'll change our game and we're done.
Through very scholarly type research books by people who haven't even had an experience or who had that fear-based, this is an ego and fear-based culture, this human species. So we have certainly not evolved, all of us, to the point, or maybe any of us, where we don't have a fear factor in ourselves, and yet the ETs do. And so this is an advanced way of thinking that we really must get to on this planet, or we're going to continue to be as self-destructive as we are as a species and allow our so-called leaders and representatives to lead us right down into the Holocaustal kind of...
so-called.
Yeah.
But they're not hostile.
Yeah.
Anyone that's being visited right now, and I've heard from so many people, high-level people, even military people who have talked about how UFOs have flown over their bases, shut down missiles.
Yep.
There are two ways that you can interpret that. Oh my God, they're coming here and they're shutting down our missiles, and so they're taking control of our nukes. And that, I've heard that. And then you hear the more sane and balanced, mature and evolved version that is, they've shown us what they're capable of doing. They didn't take us away and steal our ovaries and resources. And they didn't come in and aren't to control us, or they would have a long time ago. Why would they come into a planet that's destroying itself?
Yeah, they'd be well capable, wouldn't they, already, if they'd wanted to? Yeah.
It just makes sense. And it's very difficult. I'm an educator by background originally. And
a teacher.
It's very, it's hard for me to even admit that maybe it's my ego. I thought that I could reach people with this sanity approach, sane approach. But I'm finding that there are some people that are just simply uneducable. They're not reachable. And I have to admit that. And what I'm doing is hoping to reach the people who really get what I just said. There is a state of evolution, and we're heading for it. And we have a great opportunity in our lives now to provide a world for our children. And that includes the 500 million orphans, the people that are being droned and killed out every day. Now we can't even eat tuna fish. You heard the latest, the fish that have washed up on the shores on the California and coast where I am, up in Oregon, are irradiated. They're finding cesium. They're going to lie and say that it's not harmful, even though it's like a little bit pregnant.
Yes.
The lies that we're told are making us not know what to believe or who to believe.
That's true. A friend of mine, Carol, has a great anecdote. He says he doesn't mind if aliens turn up as long as they're vegetarians.
Perfect.
If they're vegetarians, none of us have got anything to worry about. We're okay.
Actually, the truth is they would not eat each other.
No.
They are vegetarians.
I'll reassure him with that later.
To promote vegetarianism. I head that way anyway. I mean, if we can't even eat the fish now, next 10,000 or is it 10,000 years at least.
Yeah.
It's getting to be really sad. And these fish, by the way, travel around the world. And even though the latest research on the radiation, if Fukushima's unit number 4 blows,
You're listening to Alternative Future Radio, home of the weird, resting place of the paranormal. Will take you to the furthest reaches of the galaxy and beyond. strange phenomena, aliens, psychics, cryptozoology, conspiracy, holistic health, and UFOs. Alternative Future Radio, where spooky just got real.
The Out There Hour on Alternative Future Radio. The Out There Hour with Basil and Mark. www.alternativefutureradio.com.
Yay! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Out There Hour. Good morning, Basil.
Good morning, Mark.
Good evening, everyone. And good afternoon, you're supposed to say now.
I think you got it all a bit mixed up. I was actually meant to go
a little
first.
bit awry there.
Yeah, but never mind. You're bound to be excited with our wonderful guest, Dr. Carol Rosin.
It's Carol Rosin Day today.
Yeah.
I think we're just going to declare the whole day Carol Rosin Day. It's the website, basically they've got a treaty together and they want to try and stop the weaponization of space, everybody.
Yes, and they're hoping to present this treaty to maybe China, Russia, get them to sign it, because America is not going to sign it.
Not in a million years, one would guess.
It sounds a bit crazy maybe to you, but we must tell you about Dr. Carol Rosin.
Oh,
She
do.
is corporate manager of Fairchild Industries.
She was.
She worked with German rocket scientist Werner von Braun for many years.
Yeah,
before his death.
Pretty much invented the space program.
Yes.
Well, the V1 and V2
Yeah,
rockets.
so this lady
in fairness.
knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, she's got friends in high places, astronauts, former government ministers, and they're all on board and signatories to this thing.
You're going to hear some very, very high-ranking military names.
Yeah.
During the course of this interview.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm going to play a little ad, and then we'll get her on, shall we?
Let's get her on.
Lovely.
You could give to the Red Cross. You could contribute to the March of Dimes. You could donate to the Salvation Army. Or for just $1.99, you could get the Alternative Future Radio Android application and do something that will actually make a difference in your life. Find out more at alternativefutureradio.com.
Okay, so hopefully we should now have Dr. Carol Rosin on the line. Basil's getting nervous. Are you there, Carol?
I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, Carol. Well, we know a little bit about you. We know about your Peace in Space website, peaceinspace.com. We know that you've got your space treaty that you're working on. Do you want to start on that, and we'll work around that, shall we?
Sure. This is probably the most exciting thing that I've done in the 40 years of focusing on the space issue that now has expanded into the cosmos culture, UFO ET kind of issue, which I didn't think was a reality until not too long ago. I've been working on a treaty. If we do, it's in the best interest of everyone in the complex and all over the world, the benefits and opportunities of transforming us out of the old paradigm game of war and weapons of war into a new paradigm in which consciousness evolves. We become more aware of who we really are in the universes, and how these technologies that otherwise would be used for wars again, and in fact probably would cause the obliteration of the human species. I'm sorry to make it sound so negative, but it's the truth. You hear what's happening in so many different issue areas like radiation and so on. We have a chance to work our way out of this field. And for these men and the power, as you say, behind them to come forward and support a treaty that will ban all space-based weapons, which will free up brains and money to be applied to the urgent problems on this planet of human needs, the environment, new energy, health, education, communication enhancement, etc. This is just an amazing moment in time. And the treaty itself has so many incredible points to it. There's some talking points right at the beginning of it, and it goes into a description that is based on former treaties that are past, now obsolete, like the Outer Space Treaty of 67, even updated, would not ban the kind of weapons they're planning on putting in space, which are too horrible to speak of, and the consequences are even worse. But also, this will free up the industry to allow entrepreneurs, the industries, labs, the youth of today to come into a whole new field of jobs and job trainings that are really worthy of the space age. And the whole treaty is, I mean, every point in it is worth an hour of conversation. It's really an amazing document.
I think, Carol, the main question I have, having spoke to quite a few people on the UFO subject, we've been informed that perhaps not every alien is going to be so nice. The question is, I wonder, how do we defend ourselves against an invasion? If we
Well,
have
let me make a correction. Yeah, I'll make a correction in that what you hear from people, there is absolutely no evidence of there being hostile aliens. There is a factor in the human species that, first of all, explored and experienced the past relationships that we've heard about with extraterrestrial beings. But now it is very clear to all of us who are working in an advanced state of this issue that none of them are hostile, period. So either the footnotes that have been passed through history and the interpretations and perspectives of that kind of research and or experience is what's influencing people to think that they are evil, not to mention the fact that there are so many movies and videos and footnotes, as I mentioned, I think are just amazing being passed. There's a 7-point or above earthquake.
Yep.
And what some of the experts whom I talk to say, it's not a matter of if there's one, it's when it
Obviously,
happens.
yeah.
Yeah, well, they're changing the safe levels of radiation every week, I understand.
Yeah. It's getting safer and safer
It's getting
every week,
safer and
Carol.
safer, and the radiation's getting higher and higher.
Sleep well, Carol. Sleep well, Carol. You were saying that I think you mentioned Edgar Mitchell and the former Canadian Defence Minister and yourself have all had some kind of experience, contact, whatever you want to call it. Do you want to go over what you know to be the case? Because I know I've talked to you. I've talked to you before we were on air for some time, and I still don't have the complete crux of this. So can you sum up to us your knowledge of who is out there, their names, what they're up to, where we are in all this picture? Just give us the skinny.
Well, Edgar Mitchell has not admitted to actually having had an experience, but he was born in Roswell.
Okay.
So he knows a lot about this issue. And when he's been my advisor for almost 40 years of my institute. Can you imagine? And years ago, I remember him saying to me, if you talk about UFOs or ETs, so I didn't hire anyone in my institute until I don't have anyone now working for me. We're doing this off on the side, out of pocket. Yeah, raising the money to get to Nine World Leaders to get this treaty signed. But years ago, we made a pact to not talk about this issue because of the ridicule factor and the disinformation. It's very difficult to prove that this even is a reality. Yeah. Because we don't have what some people call the smoking gun. I think we do. We couldn't have more evidence that this is a reality. It's so ridiculous. You just have to know who to believe and be able to tune in intuitively or scientifically or with your just plain common sense to know that this is a reality. That there can't be millions of people and photographs and videos and honest people that you know are telling the truth talking about this and then deny it unless you're really stupid or you've come up with this kind of skepticism that we're taught to have and think that that's healthy, to be skeptics and negative, in fact. But when you hear the real truth, if you can rise above, and it took me a long time too. I mean, I'm one of the stupid people. I didn't even hire anyone in my institute for years who came in that said they had a UFO or ET hobby or read books about it. And I really feel stupid for having done that. I turned away some really good people, I know. But so I understand. I mean, I didn't get hired in the defense industry because I was a peace activist. So I came in with that same kind of defensive, fear-based attitude that I need to protect myself and I still feel that way on occasion, but not from ETs, from humans. But it is Scott Jones, Dr. Jones, who has admitted to having contact and came up with the most extraordinary statement that I think I mentioned to you last time that I'll repeat because he has given me permission to say it on the air. However, that's going to officially acknowledge the fact that there are cosmos cultures with respect for the indigenous cultures, both of whom are mentioned as parties to this treaty that's called the Outer Space Security and Development Treaty.
Okay.
And I've been working with most amazing men to co-author it, including Dr. Scott Jones, Commander Jones, who founded the Peace and Emergency Action Coalition for the Earth, but he's actually a former naval intelligence officer. I met him when he was chief advisor to Senator Claiborne Pell, the senior ranking senator, the first senator actually who asked me, a woman, imagine, to testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee. And Dr. Edgar Mitchell, some of your listeners may know of him. Yeah, the Apollo astronaut, sixth man on the moon, and founder of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, because he wanted to study the brain and the mind after he had an out-of-body experience in space.
Wow.
And Commander Will Miller. All of these men are retired, by the way. He's a decorated Vietnam combat veteran, and also was an advisor to the Department of Defense, the U.S. Space Command, White House staff, and many people like me who have been working on this issue that seems like it's rather far out to some people, but it did to me for a long time, but it's actually real. And finally, two others, Abe Krieger, who's an aerospace engineer, 37 years at Boeing, an international space and missile business development executive, and a senior structural kind of engineer with the Lunar Orbital. He organized the U.S.-Russian space station for Boeing. He's amazing. And finally, the Honorable Paul Hellyer. Also, some of your listeners may know of him. He's the former Minister of Defense of Canada, but he is also a very outspoken supporter of not only the peaceful uses of space and a transformation of the economy all over the world, but he has also been quite outspoken about, again, this off-planet culture issue as a reality. And so I'm finding a lot of support with these men for me to get the courage to go forward with the truth, because we're all told so many lies.
These chaps, they're not what anybody is going to get away with calling lunatics, are they? I mean, normally you would say, well, this guy's crazy, let's just disregard him. They've got so much weight behind them and their careers and their titles and things that they have to be taken seriously to a degree, at least, by anybody, surely.
That's exactly right. And my biography isn't a slouch one either. So I think with the power of our biographies, which, by the way, are in full, they're brief versions of them on the website you mentioned, peaceandspace.com, but the courage behind these men, these distinguished experts in their fields that cross that military industrial lab university intelligence community complex, to take a stand that this treaty actually is about to ban all space-based weapons is quite a feat. And it's a milestone in our time, because if we don't ban space-based weapons, we're all in a lot of trouble. And